Hello，你好，Welcome back，欢迎回来。Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger on April 13th, 2022. We're slowly but surely heading into spring and hopefully summer soon. Although right now it is like 45-degree outside, definitely doesn't feel like springtime here in Canada. And I heard that in central Canada, in Manitoba, there's going to be like the worst snowstorm coming up, and it's going to be the worst snowstorm they've seen since 1998. They are expecting 50 centimeters of snow before Friday gets here. So that's some crazy stuff right in the middle of April. So we hope for the best for our brethren in central Canada. But when I was growing up, this time of the year would be time for my people to go pay respect to the ancestors, shrines, and tombs, to sweep the tombs and make sure the tombs and gravestones are all nice and clean and pretty. Time for picnics and barbecues, and a lot of people like to uh, uh, bring out some kite and they like to fly the kite at this time of the year. So let's talk a little bit about kite because kite has a very long, drawn-out history with my people, and it means a lot more than just a game, just an activity for you to run around and have a bit of exercise. The modern iteration of kite in Mandarin is called feng zhen. Feng zhen. Uh, Fengjen, Fengzhen. And Feng means wind or air. Zhen, uh, honestly, I didn't know what Zhen means until I sat down to research this episode. And I realized then Zhen means the zhen in a Chinese instrument. It's a Chinese wind instrument, a little bit like a whistle. Uh, so Fengzhen means wind whistle, which is interesting because when you look at it that way, then it doesn't make sense. Why is a kite called a wind whistle? Well, hopefully I'll be able to shine some light on it. First of all, where and when did Fengzhen or kite originate from? Well, at least in Chinese culture, there has been several debates. One group of people, one group of scholars said Fengzhen originated all the way back at the time of spring and autumn conflict. For those of you who are not familiar with Chinese history, we are looking at somewhere around almost 2,700 years ago. 2,700 years ago. It's a very chaotic period in Chinese history where there's a lot of small kingdoms uh, fighting for dominion over the land. And it's called the period of spring and autumn. During this period, there was a very famous philosopher by the name of Mu Zhu. Mu Zhu is on the same league, on the same caliber as Confucius and Lao Tzu, but most people that not Chinese or not into philosophy would have never heard of Mu Zhu. But Mu Zhu is a very, very famous name in Chinese history. It's one of the founders, one of the great founders of one of the four families of Chinese philosophy. Mu Zhu wanted to know what it was like in heaven. You got to remember, back almost 3,000 years ago, people had no idea whether Earth was round and that we are living on a planet and there's outer space and no, there's no palace in the sky. There's no Jade Emperor up there in the sky. It's just a lot of cloud and a lot of different layers of atmosphere and stuff like that. They had no idea. So people back then were very curious. What's beyond the cloud? What's on the other side of the cloud? So Muzu invented uh, a wooden bird. He made a bird out of wood and then wings out of sail. And he chose a really windy day and let it off the cliff. And it flew up, and the wind picked up this wooden bird and flew it up and up. And Muzu was hoping that this would be a way to find out if there's anyone on the other side of the cloud. Well, needless to say, the bird ended up going missing. He never got it back. But the experiment was noted in Chinese history as one of the first attempts at someone trying to fly something into the sky. So some people said Muzu's bird, later called uh, 木鸢，木鸢translate to wooden crane, wooden crane, so something like that. 木鸢 was the first generation kite. Another group of scholars said, no, 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 that Muzu's Mu Yuan, the wooden crane, had nothing to do with kite. The actual founder, the first person who created the first kite, was Master Lu Ban, or the original master of woodworking in Chinese history. We have mentioned Master Lu Ban in a past Wisdom Wednesday episode, I believe, was tied to the invention of umbrella. Uh, just in case you missed that story, Lu Ban is busy working in his woodworking shop every day because he was a master of woodworking, and his beautiful wife would come and bring him lunch every day so he wouldn't go hungry. He wouldn't forget to eat because he would get so busy. Uh, but because sometimes it would rain and she would get wet, and Lu Ban finally decided to invent a contraption that would keep her dry. And that was the first umbrella in Chinese history. Again, we are looking at somewhere close to 3,000 years ago in Chinese history where Master Lu Ban lived. So some people attributed the invention of the first kite to Master Lu Ban because the story has it that Lu Ban decided to invent something to amuse his wife with. And so he took sailcloth and formed them into wings, and then he carved the body not out of wood, uh, but he made them out of bamboo, because bamboo is a lot lighter than wood. So ideally, it would fly a lot better. So he made a bamboo bird and put sailcloth wings on this bamboo bird and gave it to his wife as a toy, as a gift. And this bamboo bird was called mu que, the wooden sparrow. So many people attributed Mu Qie to the first as the first kite because it was actually something that his wife could fly on a windy day and have fun with, rather than like Mu Zhu's wooden crane, which basically only flew once and went missing. Yet another story said that no, neither the wooden crane nor the wooden sparrow was the first attempt at a real kite. The first attempt at a real kite have to be credited to General Xin from the Han Dynasty. Um, I have mentioned General Shin in my podcast before, in the Johnny Tiger Experience podcast, in the Tales from the Far East. Now, this is a good time for me to say, if you have not checked out the Johnny Tiger Experience podcast, if you enjoy my daily video that you get here on YouTube, then please go check out the Johnny Tiger Experience podcast and subscribe. Uh, it's sort of on hiatus right now, but there is over 70 very long episodes with everything you come to love here on these daily videos. So yeah, please check it out. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to start uh, rebooting. I'm going to start up the creating new episodes again pretty soon. So keep tuned for that. Johnny Tiger Experience, best podcast in the world. Anyway, I mentioned General Shin on the podcast before as one of the greatest general in the Han Dynasty, or actually he was one of the generals that helped found the Han Dynasty. The story goes that General Shin's forces was locked in combat uh, against the forces of Shan Yu, the rival warlord. Now, some of you remember Shan Yu as a villain in Mulan back in the Disney Mulan, but they just borrowed the name and the image. The actual Shan Yu is not even in the same dynasty or era as Mulan. Shan Yu existed way before Mulan. So the actual Shan Yu was a warlord that was trying to cement his power uh, before the Han Dynasty came into place. Uh, so if Shan Yu would have won the war, there wouldn't have been a Han Dynasty. There would be a Chu Dynasty because that was the name he was going for. He was going for the dynasty of Chu, and his rival was going for the dynasty of Han. Anyway, I digress a little bit there, but it's a little bit of background information you need to know, and it's real Chinese history that might be interesting to some people. So, General Xin and his forces were locked in combat against the forces of the warlord Shan Yu, and they fought for many, many days, and they came to a stalemate. Neither side was going to gain the upper hand. And just a lot of people were dying on both sides and resources were running out. Finally, General Shin came up with this really weird idea. He created this giant contraption made of wood and leather and strings and sailcloth that would fly, it would be able to sail on the wind and be lifted up into the sky. And it could carry one person. And they put in this contraption the one person that would end up saving the day for the forces of General Shin. He put his best friend on this contraption. His best friend was the best musician of the time. He flew up into the sky on this really weird contraption, carrying his harp and his flute. And while he's up there hovering in the air, he started playing all the folk songs, favorite songs, all the most sentimental songs from that of the homeland the rival forces came from. He started to play all the favorite songs of the Chu people. Just imagine that. Just imagine that. Just imagine for a second. You are fighting a war that's against another forces and you fight long and hard, and you're tired, and you're hungry, and you don't know when you're going to die, and you don't know when the war is going to be over. And suddenly you wake up one morning, and there's this giant contraption in the sky with someone on it playing the most beautiful music you ever heard, and he's playing all of your favorite Christmas songs, or your favorite childhood lullabies, your favorite popular music, your favorite country song. Like he just sitting up there playing music. That's what General Shin's musician did. Just sat up there in the sky, being blown around by the wind, playing his flute, playing his harp, singing his heart out, uh, doing all the songs that came from the homeland of the Chu people. In hardly no time at all, Shan Yu's forces lost all their will to fight. They all packed up their weapons and deserted and went home. And that's how General Shin was able to win that battle. So a lot of people attributed the first kite to General Shin and his flying contraption, and said that it was because of the invention of the kite that we were able to have the Han Dynasty and all that came afterward. But as far as historically record, the earliest that we can trace kite back to as a recreational toy was to the Tang Dynasty, roughly 100, 1,800, 1,700 years ago. Tang Dynasty was one of the most prosperous and peaceful time in Chinese history. And just like in all the prosperous and peaceful time, when people don't have to worry about war and famine and drought, people start to find things to play with. So someone decided to take these flying contraptions that were previously used for war, make them smaller and more affordable, and decided to install little whistles on them. So every time you fly them up into the sky, when the wind blow them around, the wind would make the whistle uh, play different notes. These sound that were made by the wind sound a lot like the musical instrument zhen, which is why these flying toys became known as feng zhen, wind whistle. To a lot of people today, flying a kite or feng zhen, fang means to let go or to let fly. Fang feng zhen means to fly a kite. It's simply a game, something you do for fun. But for a lot of Chinese people, it has a much deeper meaning. For many, many generations, for hundreds of years, thousands of years even, Chinese people use kite, use fengzhen as a means to communicate with the beyond. This is something that Chinese culture is really big on. Chinese people communicate with unknown entities by uh, putting something in the air if or water. If they want to communicate with the water spirit, then they put things in the water like flowers and lanterns and just let the water take them away. They believe that was a way to communicate with the spirit. If they wanted to communicate with God, they fly kites and let the wind carry the kite away, or sometimes they do paper lanterns and they let that uh, be carried away by the wind. That's their way to communicate with the ancestors and the gods. So kite was largely ceremonial for my people as well as being something that's done for fun. Many people also use flying a kite as a way to throw away bad luck. Uh, Customarily, if you are plagued by some bad luck, if some bad things have been happening to you, or you just feel depressed, uh, it is said that you can throw away that bad energy by writing your name on a kite, and then you go out and find a nice windy place, and you fly that kite, and when that kite get to the highest point, as high as it can go, you cut the thread and let it go. And it is said that the kite will carry away all your negative energy with it. Very interesting too. In various regions of China, there have been some very, very famous kite designs. In Beijing, for example, people from Beijing specialized in flying kites that shaped like hawks or falcons, and they're so good at it that they often draw in the real thing, the real hawk, the real falcon would attack their kite because they are so realistic. Uh, People, the Jiangsu province, also specialized in flying a specialized kite. Their kite also depict hawks, falcon, eagles, but rather than focusing on being realistic, they focus on the more artistic rendition and more 2D drawing of the animal. So when they fly their kite, it looked like they got a poster or a advertisement sign up in the air, and it's a great way for companies to market their product by attaching little slogans and company names on these very well designed kites. In Shandong province, the Shandong region, they have a very unique, localized, specialized kite called the dragon-headed centipede. Most of these dragon-headed centipede kites are hundreds of meters long, and it requires 5 to 10 very strong people to fly it together. But when they finally get that thing in the air, it is a sight to behold. You can see it from miles and miles away, and it just looks like a real dragon is up there, coiling and flying and somersaulting in the cloudy sky. Of course, as a totally blind person, flying a kite has never been my thing, but it is something that I heard a lot of my friends talk about, and I heard about it in books and during movies. So I'm glad that I can share my limited knowledge on this subject with you guys today, and hopefully we all learned something about the meaning of kites for Chinese people. Thank you for checking out today's episode, and don't forget to check out my podcast. I will see you guys again in Toy Thursday coming up tomorrow. For now, 谢谢 and 再见。